There are but a handful of times in the history of our country when there occurs a transformation so remarkable that a molt seems to take place, and an altered country begins to emerge. The turn of the 20th century was such a time, and Theodore Roosevelt is counted among our greatest presidents, one of the few to attain that eminence without having surmounted some pronounced national crisis, revolution, war, widespread national depression. To be sure, Roosevelt had faced a pernicious underlying crisis, one as pervasive as any military conflict or economic collapse. In the wake of the Industrial Revolution, an immense gulf had opened between the rich and the poor. Daily existence had become more difficult for ordinary people, and the middle class felt increasingly squeezed. Yet, by the end of Roosevelt's tenure in the White House, a mood of reform had swept the country, creating a new kind of presidency and a new vision of the relationship between the government and the people. A series of antitrust suits had been won, and legislation passed to regulate railroads, strengthen labor rights, curb political corruption, end corporate campaign contributions, impose limits on the working day, protect consumers from unsafe food and drugs, and conserve vast swaths of natural resources for the American people. The question that most intrigued me was how Roosevelt had managed to rouse a Congress long wedded to the reigning concept of laissez-faire, a government interfering as little as possible in the economic and social life of the people, to pass such comprehensive measures. The essence of Roosevelt's leadership, I soon became convinced, lay in his enterprising use of the bully pulpit, a phrase he himself coined to describe the national platform the presidency provides to shape public sentiment and mobilize action. Early in Roosevelt's tenure, Lyman Abbott, editor of The Outlook, joined a small group of friends in the president's library to offer advice and criticism on a draft of his upcoming message to Congress. He had just finished a paragraph of a distinctly ethical character, Abbott recalled, when he suddenly stopped, swung round in his swivel chair, and said, "I suppose my critics will call that preaching, but I have got such a bully pulpit." From this bully pulpit, Roosevelt would focus the charge of a national movement to apply an ethical framework through government action to the untrammeled growth of modern America. Roosevelt understood from the outset that this task hinged upon the need to develop powerfully reciprocal relationships with members of the national press. He called them by their first names, invited them to meals, took questions during his midday shave, welcomed their company at day's end while he signed correspondence, and designated, for the first time, a special room for them in the West Wing. He brought them aboard his private railroad car during his regular swings around the country. At every village station, he reached the hearts of the gathered crowds with homespun language, aphorisms, and direct moral appeals. Accompanying reporters then extended the reach of Roosevelt's words in national publications. Such extraordinary rapport with the press did not stem from calculation alone. Long before and after he was president, Roosevelt was an author and historian. From an early age, he read as he breathed. He knew and revered writers, and his relationship with journalists was authentically collegial. In a sense, he was one of them. While exploring Roosevelt's relationship with the press, I was especially drawn to the remarkably rich connections he developed with a team of journalists, including Ida Tarbell, Ray Stannard Baker, Lincoln Steffens, and William Allen White, all working at McClure's magazine, the most influential contemporary progressive publication. The restless enthusiasm and manic energy of their publisher and editor, S.S. McClure, infused the magazine with a spark of genius, even as he suffered from periodic nervous breakdowns. He wanted his writers to begin their research without preconceived notions, to carry their readers through their own process of discovery. As they educated themselves about the social and economic inequities rampant in the wake of teeming industrialization, so they educated the entire country. Together, these investigative journalists, who would later appropriate Roosevelt's derogatory term, muckraker, as a badge of honor, produced a series of exposés that uncovered the invisible web of corruption linking politics to business. McClure's formula, giving his writers the time and resources they needed to produce extensive